Awesome. So our next talk is going to be from Matthew Pattinson, who's going to be talking about how we can use the lean canvas to uncover big ideas that matter. I'll cue up slides. Here you go.
Cool. Thank you. How you doing, everyone? So actually my trend for 2019 is something called Lean Impact. So there was a book that came out at the end of the year by Anne Cheng, and it's about using the lean methodology for not-for-profits. So her book's like really strategic. It's got lots of stories of how it's being used. It's great, but with my presentation, we're just going to dive into the weeds a little bit with one aspect, which is the lean canvas, which she doesn't directly mention in her book, but it's a thing I'm passionate about. Although I work at a business incubator now where we specialize in the lean methodology, my previous career was in international development. And so I worked on a 5-year program that was helping women's empowerment. And it was we wrote a grant wrote a proposal to get a grant, and you're structured into it. And lots of focus on outputs and not outcomes. And so when I go back and think about that now, and knowing what I know about the lean methodology, I can see that there's this how we manage uncertainty in non-for-profits. There was maybe some alternate ways that we could use with the lean methodology. Before I dive into the solution, I just wanted to touch on 3 things that prevent. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. That prevent uncovering ideas that can scale and have high impact. So one is that these high potential ideas are killed before they're even started. So if as an organization we have a big planning process before an idea is presented, or even if internally we don't have a way to kind of get out ideas in a quick manner, we can kill them before they even go. Second is because in the not-for-profit sector we're working on these complex problems or wicked problems, what we initially think is a solution can change as we start to unravel the coils as it is. So, and we can only act on a few ideas at a time because we have limited time and resources. So we need a way to quickly screen out the ideas of value from the ideas that don't. And then sometimes with the current proposal process and getting grants, we can kind of get stuck into building something that nobody wants and trying to deliver it on time and on budget. So it's hard to get the ship turned around as it may. I'm going to skip that for time. So the first lesson, the lean lesson for myself, is that dynamic models and not static plans are the fastest way to outline a new product or service. So plans, content tends to be made up. They're time consuming to write, and they're outdated as soon as you write them. So then it's a lot of work to write them and then a lot of work to update them. And they're not really an effective tool for communication. Models, or business models, organizational models, essentially demonstrate how an organization captures and delivers value. So they're fast to update. You can easily make multiple ones and change them as you go and as you're learning. So they're very iterative. They only focus on the key assumptions, very concise, and they're great one-page, easy conversations. So they're very accessible throughout the organization. And so the second tool that I think is the lean lesson for myself is that the lean canvas is the best tool to build models. So this is what the lean canvas looks like. So there's a whole bunch of different canvases out there. The business model canvas, social enterprise canvas. For myself, I prefer the lean canvas, and one of the big reasons is the column here on the left. It's very problem focused. And so on a business model canvas, you'll have something like key activities, which can be open to interpretation and are the essential things getting on there. But the lean canvas is very problem focused, and then also key metrics. So in not-for-profits, the things that we want to be thinking about are value, impacts, and scalability, and so we can include some metrics around there about how we're going to measure that and track it. So I think touched on the first two. The other thing I like about the lean canvas is that it connects the money to the mission. And so by having the cost structure and the revenues, you can more or less crudely kind of measure what your impact is relative to your cost. So I'm just going to touch on just some of the key segments on how to set it up. And I'll say this again at the end of my presentation. On my website, I actually spent some more time kind of explaining how to set this up for not-for-profits, but given the time. So customer segments. So here you want to put like early adopters, which are defining characteristics of your beneficiaries or your donors. And then what are the problems that you're addressing? And so in some canvases, purpose-driven canvases, they'll have like a mission or vision up top. But in the lean canvas, I think this can go right in the problem section for beneficiaries. And then it's also important to do it for donors as well, because the reason why people donate is they're expecting something out of it. Now, it can be something intrinsic, like good feelings or reassurance that their money is going to a good source. And then the value proposition is just what makes you unique. So another key thing to know about the lean canvas is that the solution box is really constrained relative to the problems. And so I think this is, as innovators, we tend to have like what we call like a solution bias. And so we're more focused on the solution and then rather than the problem. So I find that this is really helpful for myself in that everything's got to connect back to the problem and only the few key features in the solution. And one other thing that sometimes appears on other canvases is your partners. And so partners are important in not-for-profit because it's how one of the strategies for delivering at scale. So I'll either put problems in the solution box if it's a co-delivery model, or I'll put them in what's called the channels box, which is typically how donors and beneficiaries first hear about you. But I'll also put any key partners that if they're doing, let's say, in international development, like last mile delivery, they'll go into the channels box. So when to use the lean canvas. They're great for ideation sessions, strategic conversations, and they're great for both field staff and leadership. So field staff, it's a quick tool where they can map something out in 20 minutes, and it's at least a starting point for a conversation. And then leadership at inflection points where they want to have a discussion, and it's a nice, clear way to communicate. And then the last lean lesson is that the best way to find an idea that matters is to test lots of models. So because they're so quick to develop, you can develop a lot of them and changing different aspects of your organizational or program model. And then after the brainstorming, screen the ideas based on the appropriateness of like how they address the problems, who benefits and how, the risk for relative to the potential impact, and then also the ability for them to scale. And so rather than like looking just for one kind of model, just iterating again and again, and having sometimes in these brainstorming sessions, having like a forced target for models can help. I'm not going to touch on all of these, but like the key thing when testing is to, before you start, have a condition for success or a condition for failure. So this is when you're designing an experiment to test something that's you're not sure about in the model. So risk is something that you're not sure about, and the consequences of being wrong are dire to the validity of the model. Time box them. It's we can kind of drag. I have a tendency to drag things on and on, so it's nice to have a specific deadline for when the experiment ends. And then your learning is comparing what did you expect with what you got as results. So this is what the process can kind of look like laid out, is that you'd start with multiple models at the start, and then you'd screen out some, and then start going through and testing some riskiest assumptions on those, and then in the end you'll find an organizational model or a model for your program that's the best. Offers the most potential for impact and scale. So thank you, that's my presentation. There's, again, my contact information's up there. If you want to play around with the Lean Canvas and you have a program that you're ideating on, or you have a strategic planning session coming up for your organization, if you want to create a Lean Canvas, you can send it to me, and then I'll be happy to set up a phone call, and we can just walk through it, and I can provide some feedback, and you can kind of get a touch on using the tool if you're not familiar with the Lean Canvas already. Thank you.